So the praying mantis technique, you play with your wrist up like this. So if you're holding your wrist like here, it's like you had a string and you just kind of like lift up, and then you play with your wrist like this. And it looks super weird. But if you just play like 16th notes, just doing that, or like this, so you look like a T-Rex trying to drum poorly. This actually really works on like the power and the strength, the muscles related to like nice consistent taps. So this was something that I know like Murray Gussick was teaching Vanguard way back in the day, like the early 2000s. So they were doing this approach just to isolate out the muscle movements and to increase the power and strength and speed and whatnot of like the low interior taps to make those very, very consistent. So my technique involves holding the stick and focusing on this wrist bend, this kind of wrist motion. So how I hold my stick is going to kind of like be impacted by the wrist kind of motion that I'm going for. I'm not using a finger technique like a French technique where your wrist stays still and you play like this. That will not give you a fuller sound. It will give you a faster sound. So I personally prefer a fuller sound and having more relaxed approach. So when I'm holding the stick, I am not squeezing the stick, because if I do that, I can't bend my wrist, as opposed to if I let go of my fingers, then I can start flopping it and then go like this. Okay, so mainly just using wrist. Your fingers are just basically barely holding on to the stick and just allowing your wrist to be able to move. You'll notice in these streams that I spend a lot of time slow, and it's so I can refine my technique, which helps me to be able to play faster. When I'd have students, they would be like, oh no, you don't actually spend most of your time practicing slow, because they'd see how fast I could play. They'd be like, why would you do that? Why wouldn't you just play fast all the time? It's like, well, it's a kind of a bit of a paradox. In order to get faster, you have to play better, slower. So highly recommend spending most of your time on this. And in these live streams, you'll see me spend the majority of my time at the slower speeds, slower tempi, just plural for tempo. Students wouldn't believe me. Okay, you won't get better. But usually I like to practice about an hour a day. Why? That's just enough time to be able to sit and like refine something and focus on improving something, while also like making it so that my brain doesn't get too drained focusing on it. So like when I used to practice, like during my undergrad in particular, I was on a performance scholarship. And so for that, I felt like I had to practice all day. And so I practiced several hours a day, and it had diminishing returns. So there's some research that shows that like usually 2 to 3 hours worth of practice after that, and it's just like, it's kind of like you're working on your mental endurance more than anything. So you can actually get to injuries, which I did have happen to me. So about an hour a day or so. And that gives me enough time to still have improvement, while also making so my brain is focused enough that I can do all the rest of the stuff that I do throughout the day, like video edits, podcasts, stuff like that. Yeah, any faster and the fire marshal's going to be upset with me, so we'll end it there. Don't want my arms to spontaneously combust. There are a few more variations of this exercise here, and then all of these chop exercises can be found. Link at the top of the screen. There's a bunch of chop, drumming, grid, technique, etc. Literally thousands. If you've got 2 to 4 years until you're going to join a corps and you want to figure out what kind of technique you're going to use, normally what I would have said in the past is look at the technique that that group is using and try and replicate that. That works great for a group like the Blue Devils, because they've had Scott Johnson there forever. But for other groups where it's just constantly cycling out new instructors every year or every couple of years, I don't know. Because like back when Vanguard in like the early 2000s had Murray Gussick, I could say like, yeah, you want to have this open grip, open hold when you're playing. But now with Paul Rennick, no, you want to have closed hold. And so Rennick has been there for a while. Obviously they're not performing right now, but I'm assuming he'll be back. So maybe you can go with a closed grip if you're planning on going to Vanguard. But like every other group, it's like, who knows who the caption head is going to be in 5 years from now, or even 2 years from now. Moeller is a great way to stay nice and relaxed and to be able to get powerful accents while you're playing faster, rather than just relying on finger or only wrist. Alternating downstrokes and upstroke variations of triplet and 16th note grid. These are some fantastic ways that you can actually work on your Moeller technique in particular. As always, you just go into the timestamps and you can practice this one as slow as 40 beats a minute, or you can go as fast as 200 on this. I would argue that the ways that people perform are not in alignment with how they actually perform outside of school. So it's kind of like disconnected. It's anachronistic. We would engage in making music that kids didn't want to learn, and they'd be like, well, why would I care about this piece of music that was written 100 years ago? But if you shift it over and actually make it so that kids are performing songs that they care about, then maybe kids would be interested in it. Because I allowed kids to play and encourage them to play songs that were interesting to them. Like, I had over 80% of all of 5th and 6th grade inside of my band. So I did it in a way that was fun. Like, we actually, I played the drum set throughout rather than conducting, and we played songs that kids were interested in. It wasn't your typical band class, but that's not how the majority of people do it. While money is nice, if you're spending 40 plus hours of your life doing something that you don't enjoy and that you're just doing for money, you might build up a resentment for the thing that you're doing. I don't want to spend the rest of my life doing something that I don't enjoy. I'd much rather try and find how to focus on my passions. And for a while there, I deviated from that because I was staying in a job I did not enjoy because it paid more than double what I was previously making. That's just my 2 cents. There are many ways to look at it and whatnot, and many factors to consider. So at the end of my practice sessions, I like to take what I'm working on and play it super fast. And that gives me data for what happens when my hands break down that I can then use on the next practice session to slow things back down again and refine that. When you play past your comfort zone and into your breaking points, and then it shows you, it highlights, here's some of the issues, and then you can go back and go, that was a problem when I was playing fast, so I need to work on my technique slowly, spending roughly 80% of your time of your practice session just doing that, and then again chopping out at the end. As somebody who has shifted my career multiple times, you don't have to stick with one thing. Just because I have a PhD in music education, it doesn't mean I can't shift and focus on computer science education or, gaming and drumming now. If you look at my CV, I've written multiple chapters and articles on the intersections of music and computer science. You can combine your expertise and interests in different areas and kind of explore those passions simultaneously. So if you want to be a nerd, you can do that, and you can shift careers, and that's okay. Rushed one of the left-hand accents in here. Shame. Worst drummer ever. Just kidding. Don't beat yourself up if you make mistakes. Everyone does. Especially when you're trying to chop out. Paradiddle, paradiddle. She's a diddle, paradiddle. Quite chop out there. Let's go faster. All of these variations and exercises and 1,300 hours more can be found on my website, jaredoleary.com/drum. There's a ton of content on here that I'll continue to live stream and demonstrate and whatnot, so check it out if you haven't. And remember, the timestamps, you can go all the way down to 20 BPM or as fast as 240 depending on what you're playing.